essential to the environmental health of those regions and counted on for those benefits. So page 6, if you look at that, it just kind of outlines those benefits. So we where the facilities are located, you're helping those local jurisdictions meet their landfill diversion requirements. You're helping air districts try to meet their clean air goals and through the avoidance of open burning both in the fields and in the forest. And those regions that are trying to achieve healthy forests those that are actively involved in fire reduction efforts in the forest and the urban areas and the urban wildland interface zones depend on these facilities. A biomass plant is also about jobs. This is a labor-intensive, renewable technology. It takes a large number of people to collect, ship, transport, and move the fuel to and around the plants. And frankly, this is partly what distinguishes biomass from other renewables. Biomass actually pays for their fuel. But because the fuel is coming to the facilities, we're not waiting for the sun to shine or the wind to blow. We're not waiting for transmission to be built to get our power on the grid. We're baseload power, we run 24/7, and we're dispatchable. Those are qualities we know that Senator Wright would probably like. But because of these energy characteristics and environmental benefits, biomass power has been identified as a renewable industry that has special needs in the current Renewable Resources Trust Fund. Our facilities have been eligible for funds since the inception of the program. And just as a side note, you're asking the Energy Commission to kind of rate themselves. We would say consistently over the years, the Energy Commission has been very tough. They have asked us to be very introspective about our needs, but they've been very fair and open and communicative with us about the industry and the changes of the needs of the industry. They ask a lot of us in terms of justifying where the money is going, and we think that was actually a good thing. It allows them to come to you today and say, you know what, we think this money was spent wisely. We would say, first and foremost, that the money has been very valuable to the facilities. We haven't left a penny on the table. If there's an opportunity out there to improve the efficiencies of the plants, to reduce the emissions, to make it a more viable renewable technology, we're after that. The existing account has kept the facilities running for the most part, and we believe has met the goals of the program. The Energy Commission kind of explained the funds are spent on a cents per kilowatt basis. They're basically functioning as an off-price peaking incentive for the facilities when they're getting their lowest prices. Mr. Bartholomew actually explained that in good detail. And in fact, the last 5 years of the program, statute says that the facilities have to do a better job of justifying how the money is spent. And without exception, they're being used for maintenance and capital improvements, which has helped the productivity, lower operating costs, and reducing emissions. Some of those examples are, new boiler tubes, refurbished conveyor systems, and new plant control systems. I don't have a complete list, but would be happy to share that. But I think your question is, why do we need this? Why do biomass plants need this money? And I would say, again, unlike other renewables, biomass plants have to pay for the fuel, and fuel is half the cost of a facility's operating budget. The current contracts simply do not recognize this for a variety of reasons, primarily having to do with their QF status. So what we would say is, as you approach, the restructuring of the program and the reauthorization of the program, we would say ask some simple questions about industry first and foremost. Is there a value to the baseload attributes of this facility? Is there value to the dispatchable attributes? Do we value actually the environmental benefits that are in addition to the energy benefits that the facilities provide? And frankly, do we have a moral imperative to protect the existing jobs that are out there that are primarily in rural counties where unemployment rates are the highest? I would say that if we're in agreement that we support and value those attributes, this committee, this legislative body, I would say together with the PUC, need to support a policy that encourage economically viable contracts with the existing biomass power facilities. But in the absence of that, in the absence of those viable contracts, PGC funds continue to be essential to the biomass for its long-term viability and to be an active participant in the renewable industry. we've been engaged in discussions with staff and members about how that would be restructured, where you get, a bigger bang for your buck. Frankly, I agree 100% with Mr. Wright, Senator Wright, when you talk about, you have to quantify the incentives. I absolutely would love to quantify the incentives. I have that information. We can talk about very clearly what the emissions reductions benefits are for our facilities.
Okay. I do have some questions for you, but I want to wait to hear from the other speakers.
Senator, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. David Hochschild with Solaria. We're a solar panel manufacturer in Fremont. We're making a new lower-cost solar panel for utility-scale applications. At a high level, our message is, with regard to the public good surcharge, mend it, don't end it. This program has been absolutely instrumental in the success of the solar industry in California. And just to share with you, we're actually completing a memo which we're going to give to your committee at the end of this week of the benefits of the California Solar Initiative, and the foundation of that really was laid with the public good surcharge. 80,000 solar systems installed in California today. We're approaching 1 gigawatt, either installed or in the process of being installed. 36,000 jobs, $4.5 billion of private capital invested in the last 4 years into California solar companies. We're averaging over $1 billion of private capital flowing in because of this, and a 30% cost reduction in the cost to install the average system over the last 4 years. And it's positioned us really as the solar innovator. If you look at the innovation that's happening around the world in China, in Japan, and Germany, and I've been to the solar factories in all those countries, I can tell you the state of California has the world's best solar innovation happening at everywhere from the microinverter level to the module to techniques for installing better to integrating solar on new homes. That's all happening as a consequence of this program. I do think that there is the opportunity to be more imaginative in how these funds are spent, and I know Panama mentioned the idea of engaging more with local counties. If you look, for example, at the cost of permitting, for residential, for example, it's $2,500 is the all-in cost. There's a lot of friction in the process. That one could imagine a grant program to reward counties that are adopting best practices. Really looking at making a friction-free process, I think, is one of the changes that could happen. But at a high level, this program is particularly important because if you look what's happening with the Department of Energy and the likely cuts we're going to see in R&D growth, California, to keep the innovation leadership that we have and to scale, we really need the support of the public good surcharge. I've invited my colleague Matt Brost from SunPower, who's been very closely involved in the new Solar Homes program, to share his perspective on that program.
Good morning, Senator. Again, Matt Brost with SunPower. We're a global manufacturer, California-based solar manufacturer. And I'm here to represent the New Homes division of the company, and my job is the general manager and director of sales. And just real briefly, while we manufacture, we also contract directly with the builders and offer the builders everything in between the manufacturing of the product to the installation of the product and the long-term service and warranty to the customer, including all the design and engineering, the training of their sales force to actually sell homes that include solar systems, marketing, that sort of thing. My customers include, the top production home builders in the U.S., Lennar Homes, D.R. Horton, KB Home, Chappelle Homes, a number of other large home builders that, really comprise the majority of the customers that I'm working with. By way of background, I spent 10 years before the 5 years I've been with SunPower as an evaluator. So there was discussions here talked about the evaluation reports that are completed on these programs. And my last position was the statewide evaluator of the Energy Star New Homes program, where we were evaluating the success of these programs serving home builders. And the things that we learned in those programs were that builders really need continuity in program design. They need to have funding certainty. And these were problems that the California programs presented with them, and was their major. The largest reason that most home builders didn't participate is because they couldn't see that in their long development cycles. And so I wanted to start by really complimenting the New Solar Partnership, because I think that the way that this program has been designed, by being a 3-year program and providing continuity and funding certainty across geography, so the investor-owned utilities don't have different programs for the same builders building across geography. It's the same program makeup, has been extremely successful. The program also requires that builders exceed energy efficiency levels beyond Title 24 by at least 15%. And I'm a strong advocate of that piece of the program, and I really believe that this program is actually driving much higher levels of energy efficiency in homes that would otherwise exist. Builders definitely find including solar in their homes as a very marketable asset to their home, whereas energy efficiency isn't always that visible and very difficult to communicate. They wouldn't otherwise do it. So in addition to just really being able to deploy much more solar in new homes development, we're also deploying a much higher level of energy efficiency along with it. And I'm obviously, heard of, other interests in the NSHP funding, and would come back to the importance of us maintaining that funding, because if for some reason we end up short on funds in this program and builders realize that the programs and 3-year build-outs that they had planned will come under have funding uncertainty, they're going to pull out of the program just like they did in previous energy efficiency programs where they had that same concern. Today, home builders are building on average maybe 1 home per community a month. This is about a quarter, if not less, of what a healthy market is, an average market. In the heyday, they were doing 8, but we would expect them to be doing 4. So you could imagine in a market recovery, without having any more communities in the program, we could have quadruple the volume of homes being sold. And builders are absolutely anticipating this as they're starting to see the market recover, albeit slowly. I would also add that the program provides a really equitable distribution of ratepayer funds. If you think about the average production home builder, they are selling to moderate to low income, first-time home buyers, move-up home buyers, traditionally in harder-to-reach areas. And because they're including these systems in their homes, they're actually giving buyers of these homes are actually getting access to solar systems that would not otherwise have access under any other program. CSI would argue as a more, provide solar to more affluent customers. This is really providing it to mainstream Californians. We're targeting the, in the adoption life cycle, we are really hitting the early and late majority customers, where I believe the other programs have really seeded the market. And I would also add that once these homeowners, the idea that a homeowner could move into a home, take advantage of a mortgage to finance a solar system, they're all saving money the first day that they move into these homes, and they're protecting themselves from long-term rate increases. So there are significant benefits to the customer as well as the local economy. I wanted to also show you that this is a chart, and I will give you this reservation history for the new Solar Home Partnership. You can see it was very slow to begin. 2008, it was an extremely popular program. You'll recall at the end of the 2008 was the financial collapse, and you can see what that did to reservations, but how we're tracking back up now. And as we're adding a lot of communities, still at low volumes, but when those volumes come back in the next year or two, we're going to see a substantial increase in the way in which these funds are going to be paid out. So, I would just make it clear that big builders are making really important long-term strategy decisions around energy efficiency and solar. Not just in California. California has been the seed, but these national builders are taking this to other states. So, for example, Pulte is starting to do solar standard in Northern California in their communities. KB, a customer of ours, just launched 10 new communities where solar is included as a standard feature. KB's typical home buyer is the first-time home buyer, again, the moderate income. They're including this in their Martha Stewart line. So, in addition to this, it's having very significant market transformation impacts, I think, to the industry. And the number I would also add is that what builders see in this program is the ability to differentiate against the foreclosure and resale market, and they do that through energy efficiency and solar. They see this as the key to their success in being able to drive change in the market. We have, as David's mentioned, we've... Yep. 30% decrease in cost, I believe, is being driven by the volumes that we're seeing in this program. The 2020 net zero energy goals, without this program, it would be very difficult, I believe, for builders to achieve that. So I guess I would just close by saying, I think the funding certainty is very important to this market segment, and I would hate to see that disturbed because it could have long-term consequences.
Thank you very much. Mr. Goldberg.
Thank you. Lenny Goldberg on behalf of the Utility Reform Network, and we represent the small ratepayers that are paying these charges out and are very concerned about the benefits that we get from them. But I was here when the PGCs started. I was here when the PGCs were renewed, and I want to say they have been tremendously so successful that they have outlived the need to continue them. And so I'm not going to question the use of those programs. We can go back and argue about this dollar or that dollar. But I do think we have to say what we have done with the PGCs has been so incorporate them into our basic system that we do not need to impose on ratepayers a separate charge, particularly in the light of what the analysts said, that these have been borrowed from and that these can be transferred. And your comments and some of the questions in the analysis, which I thought were right on point, which is, what's the distribution of these benefits in these programs? Let me go. In 1996, we were going into an era of deregulation, and we said if in that case where prices and costs are going to be driven down, we have to make sure that energy efficiency and renewables continue. So we all agreed on the PGC without really any specification of what would be in them. 2001, we're in an electricity crisis, and everyone's saying costs are going to be driven down, the utilities are near bankrupt. We have to ensure that they spend on renewables and energy efficiency. 2011, the amount of energy efficiency dollars that come out of rates dwarf the amount that's in a PGC. Unless there is something very specific on energy efficiency, we're saying this is first in the loading order. We don't need a separate charge for this. This is completely incorporated into rates. We have argued extensively that we don't think these programs, the energy efficiency as is administered by the utilities and the PUC, is very effective, very efficient. They're getting incentives for failure to deliver, et cetera, et cetera. That's not what's at issue here. And we'll fight that out at the PUC, and we have a changed PUC. We have some legislation that asks to redirect some of that, look at alternative ways of administering the programs. That said, we do not need a separate charge for energy efficiency. And I've been asking everyone in the world, as has other people in turn, why do we need this separate PGC for energy efficiency? The answer is it's all incorporated into rates. Second, in 2001, when we had the debate about the renewable PGC, the debate was, we should have a renewable portfolio standard, but in this electricity crisis, we're never going to get there. So we should make sure we have some funding for renewables. Well, several years later, we have a renewable portfolio standard at 20%. A good chunk, as you noticed from the Energy Commission handout, of those above market, we redirected in legislation here that the above market costs of the renewable portfolio standard be funded by some of the money we're already paying into the Renewable Resource Trust Fund. That actually went back to that money did go back to ratepayers for some of the costs that they have burned. So that's one piece of the Renewable Resources Trust Fund. The other is biomass, and I agree with Ms. Malinowski-Ball, and this is related to your question because most of these are in PG&E service territory. Biomass should have, if the cost is right and the benefits are right and the benefits are evaluated, they should have contracts with PG&E. I've spoken to the Commission about that. I know that the advocates have spoken to the Commission about that. The question is, can you get an agreement that is a reasonable cost to ratepayers to sustain biomass that's in the PG&E service territory? As Ms. Malinowski-Ball said, these are dispatchable. They're 24/7 baseload. Let's get some contracts there. We don't need a separate charge that is a subsidy. And this came about from the energy crisis when we were negotiating with the QFs, the biomass got the same dollars that the QFs were otherwise going to get, and that was not enough to sustain them. So they have gotten a subsidy from the Renewable Resources Trust Fund. So what's left in a separate charge that should go on ratepayers? Well, one is you heard from the Energy Commission that they spend some of this money on compliance working with Regis. Now, Regis is supposed to be funded by fees from the users. So our Renewable Trust Fund going to working with Regis and administration and planning, this is a really small amount that has to be incorporated into whatever charge goes on the RPS, whatever needs to be done to implement the the RPS on behalf of the administration and planning of the Energy Commission, whatever their roles are already being paid for by rates, or they should be paid for by rates. So what does that leave? It leaves the new solar home partnership. Just as with biomass, I'm not here to question the value of the program. I'm here to question the organization and structure that really arguably should be with CSI. This is a CSI-related program, and that was another thing. We heard the Renewable Resources Trust Fund, a lot of it was used for solar, and then that got incorporated into CSI. Same thing with the SGIP program, which mostly was used for solar and for new online CHP after the electricity crisis. That got rolled into CSI as well. Now, we had an agreement on SB 412 that the SGIP collections will end. That program, I think, is worth an investigation by this committee because, as they said, there were all these sign-ups for, there really are no criteria, there are no evaluation. It's very unclear what that program is about. Now, we came to an agreement that we shouldn't be funding it. We should end the funding and let the spending go out, but I think you'll see bills on CSI, you'll see bills on energy efficiency, you'll see bills on SGIP. You'll see funding needing to be directed or left over for the new solar home partnership. You'll see the request for more administrative costs for the CEC for solar. In other words, we have some specific program issues to deal with. We should not be allowing a kind of general, here's a charge, tell us what you're going to do with it sometime in the future. Let's talk about the specifics of what's needed. We're really all hoping that there is an agreement between PG&E and the biomass facilities. That gets rid of a big need for the trust fund. The RPS has taken over all of this. So what I also heard is emerging technologies and distributed generation. We have had willy-nilly program for distributed generation, including SGIP, which is behind the meter, but I guess so is some of the DG at the Energy Commission. Let's have a discussion about the distributed generation. We know that the governor wants to see a lot new distributed generation. What's the point? What's the value? What's the benefit? That in itself is a program, not to be based on a specific charge that will say, figure out what to do with this later. But let's talk about a program where we know what the costs and benefits are. So in summary, we've succeeded enormously. Energy efficiency has now been incorporated into rates. Renewables have now been incorporated into rates. The benefits to solar in this state are enormous by a 33% RPS, which we supported. What we're questioning is, what is this separate charge and what it's going to be used for? It is a two-thirds vote of the legislature. Therefore, because of that, it can then be swept by the legislature and used for general fund purposes. Now, one irony there is, of course, the POUs, when the general fund is for everybody in the state, but no money, when that money is swept or borrowed, it goes to everybody in the state, but it's not paid for by the POUs. We also think that if we're going to do these charges, they have to be non-bypassable, and they have to include the POUs, and the POUs are going to get up and say, we don't see any reason for this, we're doing what we're doing. That being the case, and they are subject to the RPS. That being the case, there are a whole lot of restrictions you could put on this new charge, but I think you have to talk programmatically and not about willy-nilly general charges on ratepayers.
Thank you. It's always good to hear from Linda Goldberg. Let me ask, ma'am.
Yes, I just wanted to ask if I may testify. I called the committee.
We'll try some public comment at the end
My
of the
name is
hearing.
Barbara George. I'm a ratepayer advocate at the CPUC. I have 10 years of experience in the energy efficiency.
Okay, after this panel, we'll have public comment, ma'am. Thank you. Just a couple quick questions for Julie. I mean, I think we established the uniqueness of biomass as your fuel source, while it may be ongoing, continuing, etc. You have to pay for your fuel. But just asking you to speak to the stated goal of the program, and that is to eventually have facilities and technologies reach self-sufficiency or sustainability. And if we're not quite there yet, here's your chance to. We're not going to get there. We're almost there. If we're not going to get there, why not? Or let's talk about that.
I think actually one of the problems started with we're just a slice of a piece of a much bigger pie. There was really never enough money in there to begin with that we also share with the solar thermal folks. So let's just, we're 20% of already, a cut down amount shared with, all the other PGC programs. But where the program was successful was it was keeping, as many of these facilities online as possible. So that was good. But we did lose some facilities, primarily for economic reasons, throughout the program. And the whole self-sustainability it's a very complex problem. It's self-sustainable out in the market. Well, do we have a truly functioning market out there? And does the market value the attributes of the facilities? Does it value the non-energy attributes of the facilities to the environmental benefits as well? I would say that we got, for the amount of money that we had, and for getting to us to a point to the end of the program, I think we did as much as we possibly could have done with the money. I know that money ran out, actually, the past couple years, for many of the facilities. And so actually projects they were working on actually got cut short because the money ran out. So I would say there was never really enough money in there to accomplish the goal thoroughly.
So we're not on the brink of self-sufficiency?
No. We absolutely are not.
So then we're faced with one of two questions. Either A, do we say, okay, and we're not going to be anytime soon, but, there's some reasons for why we should continue in some way, shape, or form, maybe just do this kind of mechanism or something different to support biomass in California? Or do we say, well, we tried, after 13 years, we're just not going to get there, it's over? That's kind of a question, I guess, for my 119 colleagues and I.
Well, I would say that, what I did state in my testimony was that, first and foremost, we need to be looking at the contracts. These are all primarily all QF contracts signed in the 1980s. They were 30-year contracts, high fixed price for the first 10 years, then out in the market. But that has been substituted by a series of 5-year fixed price agreements. If we were to sign these contracts 25 years ago, it would probably look a heck of a lot different than it does now. This is an industry that was pretty new back then. It's matured over the years. We have a better understanding of what it takes to operate a biomass plant in today's economy. And contracts have to recognize that you have to purchase the fuel.
And just, I think, surprising to a lot of people when they first hear how big of a percentage of your costs are represented by fuel.
Right. And those costs have to do with the fact that you have to.
So why are they so high?
So you have to go out, and whether it's in the in the agricultural areas, in the urban areas, or even in the forest, you have to get out there. You have to collect it. You have to chip it. You have to transport it. Once you get it to a biomass facility, you're moving it around before you get that on the conveyor belt into the boiler. It takes a lot of people. It takes a lot of equipment. That is the cost. And the fact that it's not sometimes, actually in many occasions, you're paying somebody to buy their fuel, so it's not just that. You actually are putting money in somebody else's hands and say, I'd like your wood waste, please.
Otherwise, what happens to it?
We know that the fuel is going either in the landfills. It's being.
Don't you have to pay to landfill it?
We don't get a tipping fee. We pay the disposal.
So I'm sitting on a bunch of stuff. I'm either going to have to pay to landfill it, or you
actually,
can give me money for it.
I can give you money for it.
So it's a no-brainer
I wish it
for me.
were that easy. There's definitely markets out there for it. There's other people looking for the fuel. Landscaping industry likes the fuel. There's others who think there's a higher and better use for the fuel. But we do know we all the fuel studies show that it's a certain percentage of it is absolutely being landfilled. We know that in the Central Valley it's being still open burned, certain crops, orchard removals, vineyards, prunings, that type of thing. And in the forest, when you go in there for some sort of fuel reduction activity, when you're in an urban wildland interface zone trying to do fuel reduction, there is waste left over. There's limbs and brush that you absolutely need to get out of there. You can pile it and burn it, which is what they do every day, or you can get it out of there.
Okay, well, topic for ongoing conversation.
May I comment? This is the example I was looking at. On any of these, we should talk specifically about what we need and what a program going forward is, rather than an undifferentiated charge.
Okay. Thank you all very much. Let me now turn to public comment for today's hearing. I know we have at least one person who would like to come forward under public comment. Sergeant will deliver to all the members of the committee. Go ahead. Press your button, please.
Hi, I'm Barbara George. I'm with Women's Energy Matters, WEM, and we are public interest advocates at the California Public Utilities Commission since 2001. We specialize in the energy efficiency world, but we've also been in the procurement areas, and I have a comment there. We are also leading advocates for Marin Clean Energy, the community choice program in Marin, and I have very sad news to tell you. The chair of the Board of Marin Energy Authority died on Sunday night. Charles McGlashan has passed away, and he was only 49 years old. Marin Energy Authority is only less than a year old. We provide 27.5% certified renewable energy at cost comparable to PG&E. Which only had 17% at the end of last year. PG&E spent $4 million in our county to defeat us and more than $46 million statewide in Prop 16, as you may know. In addition, PG&E used untold amounts of energy efficiency public goods funds to defeat us in Marin County. And also that was done in San Francisco. This includes attempts to bribe public officials in public meetings to give them more energy efficiency and solar for their communities.
If I can ask you to focus on the item before us today, or the issue before us today.
I am talking about the public goods charge money. This is what I'm saying is being used to for dirty tricks by PG&E, and I want the money taken away from PG&E immediately. And if it's continued, it should be an independent administration of energy efficiency programs. And we know that this can start right now. We have proposals for a transition that would begin immediately. And we also wanted to just mention that the last procurement proceeding only credited 20% of energy efficiency goals as actually possible to serve load on the grid. And one of the problems is that there is no reporting on where the energy efficiency is achieved or where the money is spent, which allows a huge slush fund for political dirty tricks, which is, I can give you the, dates and times of the misuse of funds that PG&E has done over many years.
You know what? If that's your belief, then we would certainly welcome that information. Let me remind you in the audience, as I announced at the outset of this hearing, energy efficiency will be the topic of a future hearing. Today we're focusing primarily on the Renewable Trust Fund.
Thank you. I wasn't able to get to the initial the half hour of the program. I just found out about this hearing the other day. I'm so sorry.
But if I can ask you to conclude, I do want to hear from other speakers as well.
Yes. I just wanted to say that the renewables portion that Marin has achieved has been way beyond PG&E's portion, and we're getting it at the same price. We just had a request for offers for renewables. We needed 40 megawatts. We got 600 megawatts of viable renewable energy projects. They are out there. These are very, very good providers. They're the system that the utilities are running and the CPUC is administering is largely broken.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Peter Miller, I'm representing Natural.
You're up.
Peter Miller, representing Natural Resources Defense Council today, and I wanted to just say that we concur with Lenny Goldberg's assessment that we've had tremendous success for the past decade, and we look forward to working with you, with committee, to reauthorize the PGC going forward. We do think that the programs need to be designed to meet the challenges we face in the years ahead, and we look forward to working with you on it, and we look forward to commenting in more detail on the energy efficiency program at a future hearing if that's scheduled.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Lisa Oyos. Sorry, I have a cold. I'm from the Apollo Alliance, a coalition of renewable energy, labor, environmental, and environmental justice organizations. We're strong advocates of reauthorizing the Renewable Resource Trust Fund and the funds in it and funding the renewable energy program. We'd like to see principles inform what a reauthorized program would look like that include the following. One, we think it's really important to create strategies and mechanisms within this new program to expedite the scaling up of renewables and to be really mindful of the specific ways we can remove market barriers. Job creation is an important principle for us. We heard today from SunPower and Solaria. We already know renewables create more jobs than fossil fuel sectors, and we want to ensure that a new program is very mindful of job creation, job growth, particularly in light of a study that you might have seen today by Pew that ran in the SAC-B saying that the U.S. is beginning to fall behind in our global leadership in renewables investment behind China and Germany. We were first in 2008. We're third today. And the reasons that are cited is because of a lack of clarity on the direction of energy policy, uncertainty surrounding the continuation of financial incentives, and disproportionate government support for fossil fuel sectors. The last couple of principles...
I just can't help but I feel compelled to comment.
Please.
Ask your folks to help us in Washington, D.C., and I think we'll solve that problem.
We're a national group, the Apollo Alliance, and I'm our California director and also our national field director, and you bet we're working hard. The third principle is we'd like to see a measure of flexibility in a renewable energy program that would enable us to shift priorities as there's breaking technologies, as there's shift in market conditions, as opposed to like a static allocation that's set now that we'd have to draw from 10 years from now. We'd like a process and a mechanism that would enable us to be flexible as needed. And finally, we'd like to see ratepayer concerns addressed within the context of the principles we've laid out. And we're very thankful for the clean energy leadership you've exhibited, and we look forward to the renewal of this program so we can continue on that progressive path forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am Audrey Chang with the California Energy Efficiency Industry Council. We're a relatively new trade association for efficiency businesses in the state that provide efficiency products or services throughout the state. Our member companies now number over 50 companies across the state who employ more than 4,000 people in California in a variety of offices, over 130 offices in total. I wasn't aware earlier that there was additional hearing scheduled for energy efficiency, so I'm very encouraged to hear that, and definitely we look forward to participating at that hearing. But I do want to just say right now that the Efficiency Council strongly supports the reauthorization of the PGC for the efficiency programs that it's helped support. As you heard earlier today, the representative from SunPower, who's also a member of the council, the funding certainty and stability is essential for businesses in this field to be able to plan ahead, to be able to hire employees, retain existing employees. We've seen in the past instability of funding leading to just an instability among our member companies and their growth potential. Just as one example of one of our member companies who was founded just 5 years ago. It's a company called Resource Solutions Group based in Half Moon Bay. They've now grown to more than 40 employees, opened up an office in Los Angeles as well, and the PGC really helped support their business in running and efficiency programs and helping provide efficiency programs and savings for their customers. And those stable levels of investments in efficiency, partially provided by the PGC, are really important to helping maintain the growth in the companies and helping customers save energy and lower their utility bills. So we look forward to working with you going forward and others as well, and look forward to the future hearing on the efficiency component of the PGC. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. There's other members in their public comment. Ma'am, you had your couple of minutes already. If there are other members of the public who are wishing to address the committee, please come forward now. And if not, then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.